about the topic of building end-to-end solutions using InfoPath and SharePoint. So a lot to get to, so we're just going to go ahead and just dive right in here. So I just wanted to start off a little bit about talking about solutions. Obviously, solutions are meant to solve problems, but in the workplace, they can range for a very wide variety, especially with today's technology. With SharePoint and InfoPath specifically, we can store assets in SharePoint, manage request tickets, route documents to managers for feedback, and a lot more with relative ease. InfoPath and SharePoint are great tools when it comes to building solutions. Sometimes people only build solutions in InfoPath, but you have to remember that solutions are more than just forms. There are many components that kind of combine together to create a solution, such as workflow, web pages, reporting, notifications, and so forth. And probably the most important of all, solutions can help automate your day-to-day processes. This can save you a lot of time and money down the line, and your organization will be a lot more efficient when you introduce automation. And we're going to get into a little bit more detail about this a little bit later. So real-world scenarios use multiple lists. There aren't many scenarios out there, or real-world scenarios that just use a single list. And there's a good reason for it. Having a single list means your data is very flat. You typically want to have a lot more structure to your solution, to your backend. So you're going to want to have multiple lists, and you need to connect these multiple lists together in some sort of way. So you have to have some sort of relationship between your two lists. So they lend itself to better scalability. You don't want thousands or maybe even millions of records in a single list. So better scalability is definitely one reason why you want to do this. A better way to organize your data. You definitely want to have different sets of data in different lists, especially if the schemas are different. So it's very common in today's organizations to do this. Sometimes editing lists, multiple lists, or connecting them in SharePoint can be a little bit difficult to manage. Lookups are a good way of doing it, but sometimes they're difficult to maintain. SharePoint Designer also has a couple of techniques as well. A very simple example of this is a customer order scenario. You have to have a customer, and a customer has multiple orders. You want to be able to have that one-to-many relationship. You could even introduce a third list, perhaps, maybe a details, and then the details list will actually kind of feed back into the orders list. So you need to make sure you want to connect these lists somehow. And there's many other scenarios out there where you have multiple lists that are related to each other. So I kind of want to bring it all into perspective with a scenario here. I have one scenario that I'll be showing a really, really quick demo of in just a few minutes. But the scenario I have is a course lookup scenario. I have one, just making sure. Sorry about that. So looks like we have an audio issue, Marcy. If you can help address that. But going back to the scenario, we have a course lookup scenario, and the course lookup scenario is two lists. There's a course, and there's the details. And basically, if I have if I'm offering multiple courses, then I want to be able to display all of my courses in my view, but then I want to be able to display the details at the same time. So, typically if I have all my courses in a list, I'll click on one of the courses. It's going to show the details in maybe a modal dialog type window. But imagine if you could actually see the entire course layout, or the list of courses on the left-hand side, and then I click on one of the courses, and then on the right-hand side, it'll show me my details. And then every time I click on a new course, it'll just show me the details on the right-hand side. This is nice because I don't have to, I don't have to lose that list on the left-hand side. It kind of connects the two views together, sort of creates this dashboard interface. So it's kind of creating this master detail relationship. So that's the scenario I'm going to be talking about right now. And one way of actually accomplishing this, many techniques. And if you've been attending our webinars, we've covered these techniques in the past. So I'm just kind of reiterate a couple of techniques that we've been offering, been suggesting. But one of the techniques is connected web parts. Basically, the technique here is you can have a master list connect to a child form. And the way to do this is you have a list web part, and you have to connect it to an InfoPath form, web part, or a list form. And you do this using web parts and part-to-part connections. This is a great example of a codeless technique. There's absolutely no code involved to write this. It took me about maybe 20 minutes, half an hour to set up. So it certainly does not take very long to set up. And it kind of opens the door, especially with web parts, is a very, very easy way to kind of connect mashups with multiple things. So I'm going to escape from the presentation here real quick and then show you the demo that I have here. Now, I've showed this demo in the past, so to some of you this might be similar to what you've seen, but there are some tweaks here that I made that I'll kind of highlight in just a few minutes here. But basically, this is the idea. I have a course lookup. Here are all my courses that I have on the left-hand side. You can see here, these are all the courses that I offer. And on the right-hand side here is the details. And then in the details section, I'm showing basically the course description for the course. So if I can click on any one of these courses on the left-hand side, you can see that the right-hand side, the details get updated with the course description for the one that I just selected, and so forth. And this is fairly easy to create in InfoPath and in SharePoint. And I'll show you really quick how you do that right now, because it really only takes a couple of minutes to get this part set up. So I'm just going to go ahead and blow away both of these web parts just to show you how to make this from scratch. It's very, very easy. And again, it's a codeless technique, so you don't need to write any code. So here I have a web part page. It's a very blank web part page here. I like this particular layout, but you can choose whatever layout you want. So in this left column here, I'm going to go ahead and add a web part. And you can see here there's a bunch of web parts that you can add. There's the InfoPath web part here. We'll get to that a little bit later. But there's a bunch of out-of-box web parts that SharePoint offers, so feel free to go and explore. But for the web part that I want this courses web part. So I'll go ahead and add that. All right, so as it's adding, you'll see that once it's added, it'll basically show me the list view as a web part in my page. And here it goes. So here you can see there's the list view in my web part. But this is not exactly the view that I want. If you notice here, it shows me the description. It shows me all the columns here. And that kind of defeats the purpose if the details are in this list view. So what I did was I actually created a separate view. I created another view in my list. I called it a simple view. And all that simple view is that it'll show me just the title only and not the description and all the other columns. So to do that, there's this contextual menu here. Click on Edit Web Part. That gives me this tool pane on the right-hand side. And at the very top here, there's a selected view. And you can see here I created my simple view ahead of time. So I'll go ahead and select that. And it's just warning me that changing the view might change this web part connections, which is fine, because I don't have any. So I click on OK. And great. So now my courses web part here on the left-hand side looks like how I expected. So that's one half of it done. So that's the left web part, and that was really, really easy. Even creating that view just took me like a couple minutes. So the next thing I want to do is I want to add my InfoPath form web part. So I'm going to go ahead, add a web part. It's under Forms here on the left-hand side, InfoPath form web part. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and add the web part. And I'm going to get this selected form here. So I'm going to go ahead and open the tool pane just by clicking on that link. On the right-hand side, the tool pane opens. And I'm going to go and select my list, my courses list. Okay. So what I did beforehand was I actually took that list, that same list that I saw on the left-hand side as courses, and I customized it in InfoPath. And the other step that I did when I customized it in InfoPath is I created a second view. I created a display view or a read-only view. And what's good about this is that I don't have the luxury of letting the user edit the information. I don't want them to. So I'm going to create a separate read-only view that they can see the information, but they can't necessarily edit it. So that's what I did. So I just used calculated values, read-only text boxes, that sort of thing. So I can make sure that I load up the proper view by default, this display here, and that's what I created here. So click on OK. And that's it. And now the InfoPath form web part is loading up the proper form with the proper view. And that's it. And that's the second part of the equation, the two web parts. The last part is to actually connect the two web parts together. So how do I do that? So that's very, very easy. Again, go to the contextual menu, hover over connections. I can go get form from, and it's going to show me all the web parts that I can get a form from on the page. And since there's only the one other web part on the page, it's showing me the courses as the one that I can choose. So I'll go ahead and click that. And that's it, and that's pretty simple. Now I created the part-to-part connection. Now it's actually going to go and send the data to each other. So if I go ahead and get out of edit mode, and basically I'm at the same point where I was at the beginning. I can click on the select button here, and it'll show me the details on the right-hand side for my particular course. All right, so we have a question from Andrew here, and actually that's a good thing that he called it. I was going to talk about that real quick here. So if you notice, before I created the Webpart connection, there wasn't a select column here. It was just the title. And after I created the Webpart connection, this select column was added. And that's actually a result of me creating the part-to-part connection. The select column gets added, and then because of that, I can actually go and click on these icons, and I can, and that'll actually make the web parts talk to each other. So say, for example, I click on this one, then that web part knows, okay, I need to go and send this other web part a piece of information. That web part receives that information, and it'll go and load the proper line item as appropriate. The other question that comes up very often is how, this is great, but I want to change that icon on the left-hand side, that select. As far as I know, there's no way of changing that icon, unfortunately. You're going to have to kind of deal with using that icon. Like some people were asking me, can I change it to an option button or anything like that? As far as I know, there's no way to do it. Maybe there's a way to tweak it in SharePoint Designer, but I personally have not been successful in changing that icon. So Bruce has another question here, is also a very good point. So let's see. So here there's a get form from, and then there's get data from. So typically, with get form from is a very simple, is a much simpler data connection. You're going to use that for list web parts more often. Get data from is a little bit more complex, and I'll show you that in just a second. I have another demo that's going to use the get data from, I believe. I showed you how to get form from using the InfoPath from web part, but alternatively, you can actually do it the other way around if that's how you think. You can actually go to the courses web part, go to connections, and you can send row of data to. So it's the exact same thing. If you want to instead send a row of data to the InfoPath from web part, you could do it that way. And they'll both create the exact same data connection. So it's really up to you in terms of how you kind of think about, when I'm creating this part of our connection, do I want to send the data or do I want to receive the data? Both would work. My second demo here is along the same vein. It's the same scenario. It's the course lookup scenario, but I tried to take it one step further. I have here an InfoPath from web part, and it's connecting to another InfoPath from web part. So in the last scenario, I had a list web part connect to an InfoPath from web part. Here I'm having an InfoPath from web part connect to another InfoPath from web part. So at the top here, it's a little bit different, but the same idea. I have a drop-down. It has all my my courses that I offer in this drop-down. I can select a course here, and if I scroll down, you can see that the course description gets updated in the second web part. But how I took this a little bit further is that now, this is basically replicating the same functionality as my list web part. But I wanted to be able to filter. I wanted to be able to, maybe instead of I only have maybe about, say 20 courses here, what if I have 100 courses? What if I have 1,000 courses? I don't want to have my user have to scroll through all those courses to be able to select the right one. I want to be able to allow them to filter it down. So that's what I did here. I implemented two filters. I implemented a filter for term. I implemented a filter for year. So if I wanted to only see the courses that are offered in the winter term, I can select the winter option button here, and if I pull down the drop down here, you can see that the courses got filtered to only the courses that were offered in the winter. Likewise, I can do that for a year. I can combine them. This is just kind of a simple filter just to demonstrate. I could do a search. I could have a text box and filter based on a string if I wanted to. Keywords. The possibilities are kind of limitless here. And otherwise, it's pretty much the same functionality. It's a little bit different in how the data connection is set up. I can just show you that really quick. I want to make sure that I get to the other demo, so I don't want to spend too much time here. That just removes the data connection. I gotta go in. I need to allow pop-ups. So the data connection is going to be a little bit different here. You see I have to actually map what field. The provider is just the source web part, and then the consumer is actually the target web part. Source target, if you're familiar with that verbiage, or it's basically the web part that's sending data to the other web part. And this is the consumer would be the destination, and the provider would be the web part that's actually sending out the data. And all this is saying like which field am I mapping to the other field. I have to make sure that I promote the web part properties correctly. Use property promotion. That's very important. Otherwise, the field won't appear here. So if you're interested, maybe this, leave feedback. I can probably go over this in a little bit more detail. I believe I did go over this in a lot more detail in the previous webinar. So feel free to go and check out our YouTube channel. I believe that there's links to another webinar that I did on this that I think dove into a little bit more detail on how this is created. Okay, so back to the presentation here. So the other piece that I want to talk about in terms of building end-to-end solutions is the workflow piece, and that's also another big piece. We do workflows all day long. Every day our work processes go through a workflow. We hand out something to be signed. That's a workflow. We ask for permission to do something or purchase something. That's even a workflow. In terms of workflows, what's great about doing an automated workflow is that it helps automate this business process. It helps enforce consistency across the organization. That's actually a really, really good point because, you might have a workflow being done in one part of the organization and then a separate part of the organization. And what these workflows do is that it helps make sure that both of them follow the same sort of steps. It helps provide structure to anyone new to the process. Suppose I have a new employee, or maybe there's just lots of people in the organization, and this is, not a workflow that is done on a daily basis. So it makes sure that anyone new to the process knows exactly what's going on, so they're not flustered, they're not lost in the process. Mistakes or diversions, you definitely, if this is sort of an automated process, it definitely helps prevent these sorts of things from happening. If it's a manual process, you maybe, forgot to check with one particular manager, or maybe you forgot to fill out one of these forms. So automating this will definitely help prevent any of this from happening. And a lot of times it's very reusable. You could take a workflow, apply it to one sort of scenario or one solution, and take the same workflow and maybe apply it to a separate solution. You might require a little bit of tweaks here and there, which is perfectly fine, but for the most part, it's reusable, which is really, really good. So a couple of workflow technologies here that I'll talk about. There's two flavors. There's the InfoPath Workflow. I don't know how much of you folks are very familiar with InfoPath, but what's great about InfoPath is that it has all the tools in InfoPath itself to actually create workflow within just InfoPath. You can use rules in InfoPath just to manage your whole routing and all the logic with workflow. You do this completely with InfoPath Designer, and what's great about this is that it adds a lot of flexibility. What's great, the InfoPath canvas is very rich, so you can go and modify it however which way you want, and you can create it into a template part. So that way, if you have multiple forms that you own and you want to apply, say, an approval workflow to each of these forms, you could just reuse the control, this template part, and that way you have a consistent look and feel across all of your processes. And then finally, you can you can export your data to external sources for reporting. The second flavor of workflow, and perhaps what most people are familiar with, is SharePoint Workflow. A lot of times people think of SharePoint Designer, they immediately think, oh, okay, that's my workflow piece. SharePoint Designer is actually much more than that. I probably use SharePoint Designer 80% of the time, excuse me, for workflow, but it's really, really good at other things as well. With SharePoint Workflow, obviously the routing happens on the SharePoint server. Even within SharePoint Workflow, there's two different flavors. There's out-of-box workflow. There's a few that you could just, that SharePoint has a sort of boilerplate, and you can kind of get started with it really, really quickly. Just add a couple of fields here and there, and then you're good to go. Or you can basically create from scratch with SharePoint Designer. It's a great generic solution, and it blends itself very well into the Office client. So just really quickly here, because I'm running out of time, I'll show you a really quick demo here of SharePoint Workflow. Here I'm logged in as a user who only has contribute permissions, not full control, so that's very important here. But basically what I did was I created this very, very simple workflow, and all this workflow here is just modifying the permissions. So I'm going in, I'm actually creating a list item. And let's see if it refreshes. Oh, there's a problem with the page. There it goes. So all I did was I created a list item, and what it's going to do is it's going to go and remove the permissions for myself, the person who created the item, and I only want view-only permissions. This might be useful because if I have a ticket request, for example, I want to go and submit a ticket request, but after I submit it, I don't want the person who created the form or the person who created the request to change the request at all. I want them to make sure that it's only, I want to basically approve it, or I want to say, okay, I want to kick it back for more info. So I need to modify the permissions to make sure it does that. So if I go ahead and I open my list item, you can see here I can see the details of my particular item, but I actually don't have edit permissions. It's actually grayed out. And that's really, really easy to create in SharePoint Workflow. All I did was I created an impersonation step, and I had one item, one action there that replaces the permissions for the particular user, and I set it to only view only. So that's really, really simple. And just kind of a quick example of how SharePoint Workflow can be really beneficial for particular scenarios. And this is all done within SharePoint. There's no InfoPath involved here. So that's kind of one really, really simple case of how SharePoint Workflows can help you out. All right, so just a few more slides here before I wrap up, and I'll take some time at the end and entertain any questions that you might have. And feel free to stick around as well. I'll be here for a few minutes to answer any questions that you folks might have. So just a little bit about reporting. With reporting, a lot of people have been asking me as well about, what are my reporting solutions for these kind of end-to-end solutions that I'm building. I don't have the solution of exactly, oh, you must use this. There's many, many reporting solutions out there. So here are just a few ideas of several options that you can use. There's InfoPath, of course. For very simple reports, you can just create an InfoPath form that pulls from multiple lists and does filtering. Excel is really, really great. You can export your SharePoint list to Excel. You can point your SharePoint list. You can use SQL. Excel services, basically the exact same offerings as Excel, except in the browser, of course. There's Access. You can point at a SharePoint list. You can point at a SQL, create a report that way. SharePoint Data View web parts, same idea, sort of. You can point at a list, create a custom view. My course lookup example is sort of a reportish type kind of scenario because you're not really entering any data. It's all just a catalog that you're looking at. And finally, SQL reporting services. You can create a SQL report and show it in the browser. So just a few of some ideas of how to go and go about your reporting. So just to kind of summarize real quick here, end-to-end solutions, lots of techniques. I only showed one of them, but there's many techniques out there. But really, you got to think about it, from the 5,000 level foot view. So you need to make sure that you're, connecting these multiple components. And there's many different components that go into a unified solution. There's workflow, there's notifications, there's web pages, there's lots. So really think about, how you're going to go and combine all this together to create your solution. And why do you do this? Well, to automate your business process. This will help improve your day-to-day responsibilities, your tasks. It helps provide structure and all those examples that I talked about earlier. So in terms of the key takeaways here, InfoPath can be used to make richer solutions. I demonstrated the web parts. It can be used as sort of a web page editor. Workflow, although I didn't demo this, you can use InfoPath to create workflow as well. It could be your workflow editor. It has all the tools that you need. It has rules. It has views. So you can definitely create your own workflow logic within the InfoPath Designer. And finally, data-driven design is very important. And these days, and it has been for a very long time, it's really all about the data. So you really want to make sure that your data structure is very sound, that it's very good, that it scales well. You need to make sure you have very good parent-child relationships. Good relationships among the data is very important. And connecting multiple lists is a very big factor in that as well. So apologies, a little bit over. It's 8:31 right now, according to my clock. So that pretty much wraps it for my presentation here. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a little bit more of an idea of kind of building end-to-end solutions, or at the very least, kind of asking yourself some questions that maybe you haven't asked yourself before. So I want to take this time to now answer any questions that you might have. And thanks for joining. I'll stick around for a few minutes, like I said, and hope you all have a great rest of your day. Hey Justin, so just reading your question here, is the Webpart form in SharePoint that you used in the first demo come built into SharePoint, or is it a custom thing that I've added?